Hello everybody, my name is Alex Merced. I'm the head of DevRel here at Dremio, and welcome to this pre-recorded version or preview of our Apache Iceberg workshop. Now, if you want to go through the exercises and experience the things I'm going to cover in this video, do register for one of our workshops by heading over to dremio.com/events. That's dremio.com/events. Now, in this Apache Iceberg workshop, what I want to do is first just sort of discuss what is Apache Iceberg and why it matters, and how this way, when we talk about how Dremio is a platform that really, truly makes Apache Iceberg a first-class citizen in your data warehouse, well, we really mean it. So let's first discuss that why. And again, my name is Alex. I am the head of DevRel here at Dremio. I also got to be the co-author on Apache Iceberg, the definitive guide, and Apache Polaris, the definitive guide. So I do spend a lot of time thinking about the data lakehouse, Apache Iceberg, and these topics. And on that, you can get a free copy of Apache Iceberg, the definitive guide, and Apache Polaris, the definitive guide, by scanning this QR code. You'll be able to find links where you can download both books for free. So if you're watching this, free stuff. So to really illustrate what is the deal here, let's talk about the status quo. So in this case, let's talk about here where we have the status quo of today's world. So typically what happens is once you become a larger enterprise, you're going to have a couple different potential problems with your data platform. What typically happens is that different parts of the enterprise are all going to end up independently building their own data warehouses. So you might have one department, let's say sales, using Snowflake, finance is using Redshift, marketing is using Synapse. So now you have all this data across clouds, across data warehouses, and then different departments wanting to do corporate 360 type analysis or enterprise-wide analysis. They're not only having to ETL or export, transform, and load their own data into their department data warehouse, but now they're having to ETL data from other department warehouses across. And this causes, one, it creates latency because now you're waiting for that data to come in order to use it. It creates costs in the cost of the compute for the ETL to bring that data over to your data warehouse, the cost of that storage. And since in this situation I made them across cloud, you're also paying egress fees as this data enters one cloud's network to another. So overall, it ends up being really expensive and really time consuming. And that's assuming everything goes right. There's also the potential of bugs, inconsistent data issues. Overall, it is not an ideal situation when you're just trying to do enterprise-wide analytics and you're trying to keep up with the pace that's needed for today's world of AI projects and BI projects, where you need to really make business critical decisions at a business critical pace. So what's the solution to this? The solution is to not need to move the data every time different parts of the company use different tools. To do this is why you adopt a lakehouse pattern. So the idea here is that all the departments, they might use their preferred tools. Okay, I mean, again, sales might want to use Snowflake, finance may want to use a Redshift or whatever, or marketing might want to use a Dremio or a Trino or something like that. They can all use whatever tools they like, but the idea is that they all land the data in the same place. So the data is only stored in one place in a similar format called a open table format. This is what Apache Iceberg is. So essentially now you land the data files, which are Parquet files, as data files in an open storage layer like an Amazon S3, an ADLS, or Google Blob Storage. Then you'll land those data files. Those data files are then wrapped by a metadata layer, so that way we can treat all those data files as one table. That's where Apache Iceberg comes in. So Apache Iceberg is providing us that metadata layer that tells us about our data, allowing different tools like Snowflake and Dremio to be able to understand and work with that table in the same way, providing that consistent interface with uniform data. And then you have a catalog layer like Apache Polaris that tracks these tables, that governs these tables, etc. Now, this works really well in the sense that now, if sales wants to use data from finance, all they have to do is get access to the data. There's no need to ETL the data, even though they're using two different sets of tools to run queries on the data. So you're saving yourself all those additional costs. You're reducing the time to insight, overall getting a much better story. But there's still a lot of frictions here because at the end of the day, you still have to figure out where's this catalog coming from? Where is this catalog going to be hosted? Am I going to self-host it? Basically, unlike a database or a data warehouse where the data is constantly being optimized under the hood, you now essentially have a decoupled data warehouse, essentially a modular data warehouse using your data lake storage as a storage layer. Okay, so how do I make sure that my tables are optimized? Well, typically you would have to do this yourself. So you're now doing things you didn't have to do in a data warehouse, such as managing catalogs, such as managing, doing data file management to make sure that they're optimal for performance. And these things can be pretty tedious. And this is why you would want to use the Dremio Intelligent Lakehouse platform. We take all those frictions away. You no longer have to worry about things like deploying a catalog. Okay, we have our own integrated catalog, powered by Apache Polaris, and it's just there to be able to track and govern your Iceberg tables. You have a built-in query engine that's going to be able to have not only run queries and be able to write to Iceberg tables, but do it at industry-leading performance because it's built to work with Iceberg tables. It doesn't work with Iceberg tables sort of because it must. It works because it is the right choice. And on top of it, allows you to wrap all your Iceberg data along with your data in other sources, such as other data warehouses, relational databases, NoSQL databases, the data you have in other places, be able to organize and model all that data in one AI-enabled semantic layer, giving you a situation where it's much easier to manage your Iceberg Lakehouse, because again, you're not having to deal with performance management, because Dremio will take care of this for you, but you're getting that catalog taken care of for you. You're going to have a powerful SQL query engine and a semantic layer that wraps all that data in a nice bow for you for your end users. So let's actually see this in action. Okay, so, and again, one of the beauties of having a catalog from Dremio is one, you don't have to manage it, it's just part of the platform. So as you can see here, if I head over to the Dremio platform, so I'm going to make this window a little bit bigger, the Dremio catalog, the enterprise catalog, is just there. Okay, it's just something that's built right into your platform. You can add other data sources. So I can click over here and click on add data source. And you can see here, if I have Iceberg tables in other Iceberg REST catalogs or other catalogs like Nessie or Snowflake Open Catalog, I can connect those catalogs too. So again, we are able to service all your Apache Iceberg tables, but we're also able to unify that data with data you have in other databases, data warehouses, and data lakes, okay, through our federated query engine. But the Dremio catalog is just there, okay, which is really nice. You don't have to worry about maintaining it, about managing it. It's just there. And because it's based on Apache Polaris, it leverages what's called the Apache Iceberg REST catalog interface. Bottom line, think of it as like think of REST catalog as a universal adapter. So because we are taking advantage of that universal adapter, you can now use Dremio catalog, not just with Dremio, but with any tool that knows how to work with that universal adapter. So for example, a very popular tool for moving data into Iceberg or into other formats is Apache Spark. So here I have Spark running right on my laptop. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to write some Iceberg data into the Dremio catalog. So you can see that this works with whatever tool, long as it works with the Iceberg REST catalog. So in that case, you'll see the Spark script right here. And essentially I'm grabbing some details that I have in the environment that gives information about my specific Dremio setup and my specific Dremio credentials. I am then configuring Spark. Okay, so this section right here is that when you set up Spark, and this is one of the niceties of Dremio, you don't have to do a lot of this configuration, especially since the enterprise catalog is built in, it just knows it, and basically all the catalog configurations out the window when you're using Dremio specifically. But when you use Spark, Spark doesn't know about your Iceberg catalog, so I do have to configure it. So you can see here I have all these settings, telling Spark that, hey, during this Spark session, I have this catalog, which I'm going to call Dremio, and here are the settings so you know how to talk to my catalog. Okay, so that's all this, just kind of setting it up, making sure that Spark has the right libraries, all these good things. And then I'm going to go in here, I'm going to create a namespace. So right now you see that I have these namespaces from previous examples I've done. Okay, I'm going to create one for today, August 11th, okay, 2025. And then I'm going to create a subfolder in there called test1, because these namespaces, think of them like folders or just little subdivisions for you to organize your data sets. And then I'm going to create some tables, a customers table and a orders table in that namespace. Then I'm going to put in a couple rows of data into each table. And then we're going to write those rows of data to those tables, and ta-da. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click right up here. Just going to just double check to make sure that I don't see anything I need to adjust. All this looks good. Okay, so I'm going to go right over here. I'm just going to hit this play button to play my notebook. So again, I'm in a Python notebook, and this is all Python code, specifically PySpark code running in a Python notebook. So right now that's running. It looks like it's doing its job. Oh, that's it. Oops, typo. Create namespace if not exists. Dremio.og11. I have an extra character there. So luckily Python errors are descriptive. Oh, there's that extra character. So let's get rid of that little quotation mark. And let's try that again. You gotta love it when the errors can tell you exactly what the problem is. Okay. And now that's running. There it goes. And we can see that's a sign that it's actually like doing some like work, like writing the data. So it's writing data. There it goes. And now it says the tables are created and sample data is inserted. Okay. So now that's going to be available in here. Now notice right now, if I were to refresh this page, see, I don't see the August 11th folder in there yet. The reason being is that based on the settings for any of these data sources, I can go over here to metadata and change how often does it check to see, hey, has anything changed? I'm going to lower this to 1 minute. So that way it fetches 1 minute. But just because it hasn't detected it yet, I can still query it. So if I were to go over here and grab the name of that table, Dremio.August11th test1 customers. Okay, because again, I kept the names consistent. So the catalog name in Spark was Dremio. The catalog name in Dremio is Dremio. So I keep it all consistent. So now I can go over here to the SQL runner where I can run queries. Okay, and I'm going to do select star from. Okay, and I should be able to run a query on that table. Okay, and see, that query ran just fine. See how easy it was for me to run a query right there against an Iceberg table? As long as basically I have the catalog connected to Dremio, I can just run a query and it'll discover that Iceberg table. So even though Dremio did not write those Parquet files, Dremio did not write that metadata, because it's in a universal open format like Iceberg, both tools were able to work with that data pretty instantaneously. Pretty much right after I wrote that data into Iceberg with Spark, I was immediately able to query that with Dremio. And again, now I can see that the August 11th folder is there because it's been like a minute. And I can see like test one, and I can see my 2 tables there. Okay, and see now basically my entire catalog of tables is visible to me, even though they were written with another tool. Any other tool that can talk Iceberg can then also see these tables, and that's the beauty of having an open catalog. And you have this built-in catalog that's ready to go for you inside of Dremio that you don't have to do anything to set up other than just have Dremio that gives you that open atmosphere. Okay, so again, I was able to do that. And again, using Dremio, you can also use Dremio to write Iceberg tables. Okay, let me go write another table and just show you how easy that can be. Okay, so let's create a table. So we'll say, hey, create table Dremio dot August 11th dot test1 dot tests. It's a test table, and this table will have one field. We'll just say name. That's a varchar, just to kind of illustrate a point. And notice I'm using right now I'm using the Dremio UI to write this SQL. It's not the only way to interact with Dremio. Dremio, at the end of the day, all that matters is that you send SQL to Dremio. That can be sent either through the UI, but that could also be sent through REST API, through Apache Arrow Flight, through JDBC, ODBC, and anything you see that I can do through the UI, there are going to be SQL statements that allow me to do it programmatically through those other interfaces. So people will build entire applications on top of Dremio. So I'm going to create this table, and then the cool thing about the UI is I can actually put multiple SQL statements here. So I can now also might as well do an insert into one there. Into Dremio.Aug11.test1.test. I think that was not a period. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to insert some values. So we'll just put in the name, Alex Merced. Okay, and then I will query the table so we can see that it actually happened. Select star from Dremio.Aug11.test1 dot test. And again, notice the red squiggly line. So like again, when it thinks that the syntax is wrong, the nice thing about the built-in SQL editor in Dremio is that it really kind of signals to you, just like if you're using like VS Code or something like that, that gives you all this sort of useful context and useful tools to help you work with that. You know, basically most of the shortcuts you're probably familiar with in something like VS Code are going to be available here. Things like multiple cursors. Let me just try that out real quick. So you can see I can do like multiple cursors. Most of your traditional coding shortcuts are going to be available here, making it just a very nice place to kind of write your SQL code. Okay, so now I'm going to run this code. And see, I can see each transaction, each of them getting their own tab with the results. So I can see the table was created. Then rows were inserted. And I can see that when I queried the table, I got back one row, Alex Merced. Okay, so you can see like it runs very quickly, it runs very easily, so I'm easily able to work with Iceberg. Notice I didn't really have to do much to configure this. The catalog was pretty much registered in Dremio out of the box. It just is there. Okay, and I can just basically work with the tables in there like I would work with a Snowflake table in Snowflake or with a Postgres table in Postgres. But it's not this proprietary table enclosed in a single system. It's this open table that can work across many systems. And Dremio just gives you the easiest experience for working with an open Iceberg table. Okay, with a really, again, nice UI that even makes it easy for like business users. But now I can see that table I just created, August 11th, test 1, I can see that table's created right here. Okay, and then theoretically I could go query that table with Spark. Okay, so now if I were to go over here and go back to Spark, and let's actually grab that name, Dremio August 11th, I can actually go query that table with Spark just to kind of really emphasize my point here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment all this stuff out. So that shortcut. Does your traditional shortcuts work here like this? Yes, it does. Perfect. Okay, so I've commented that out. And now all I want to do is do a spark.sql select star from Dremio test 1. Then we want to actually see the results, so .show. Okay, and now I'm going to run this, and this should show us the results. Okay, typo. Oh, I forgot to do a closing quotation mark. That's why. There we go. Okay. Boop. Now that's running. Let's doing the query. And see, I got back the results. So notice, even though I wrote the data with Dremio, I'm still able to query it in Spark. Again, just really emphasizing that interoperability between engines. So whether it doesn't matter who wrote the data, all tools can read it, all tools can write it, as long as you're following that open format that is Apache Iceberg. Again, that's why we get this instead of this. Okay, because we no longer have to be moving the data between these different tools because all of our tools can talk to the single copy of the data. Okay, cool. Okay, so again, just to kind of reemphasize sort of one, what are the benefits of using Iceberg? Again, when you're using Dremio, you're going to get unified data management. You're able to manage all your data in one place. Again, when you're using Iceberg, you're going to get that cross-engine compatibility. Okay, you're leveraging open standards, and again, now you just have to focus on getting the data into Iceberg, and then all your tools can do whatever they need to do with them. It just becomes a lot simpler to think through. And when you're using specifically Dremio catalog to do that, again, you don't have to worry about the deployment overhead. You don't have to think about where does this catalog come from and managing it. It's just part of your Dremio deployment, but it works with all your other tools. Okay, Dremio has also different security mechanisms, so that way you can use your preferred identity provider. Okay, so if you want to use, like, if you're handling authentication using sort of, let's say, Google or some other typical authentication method, that can be built in. You have granular access controls. So now not only am I able to track these tables using Dremio catalog, but we're able to create RBAC rules, role-based access control rules, that will be honored across tools. So if I were to say, hey, X user can only see this, cannot see this table, whether they're trying to access the catalog in Spark or Dremio, they will not be allowed to access that table. So it creates portable governance, along with fine-grained access controls that are built in Dremio, so that you can mask columns and rows. And the the real chef's kiss here is the autonomous table optimization. Okay, so now if I go over here to Dremio, okay, I have all these tables, and if it's in the Dremio catalog, by default, they're going to be autonomously managed. So let me just show you. So you see here, if I take any table, let's go here to August 11th, test 1. If I go to any table and I go take a look at the table settings, I'll notice that there's a section called table maintenance. Okay, and essentially you're going to do is you're going to see an option here that says, okay, do you want the table to be maintained? And that's generally going to be on by default. Okay, let's try it with this table. Okay, usually there's a little checkbox that shows up, but essentially you'll see here if I go to my list of jobs, so right here I'm seeing the list of jobs that have been running on my Dremio cluster or on my Dremio instance, and I can see that these optimized table jobs that are running. So Dremio's behind the scenes optimizing the table for you, so that way you don't have to worry and think about table optimization. It'll just periodically run it based on sort of the cadence that you set automatically. Okay, so again, no longer are you having to worry about scheduling all these different rewrite data file jobs in Spark and orchestrating that with Airflow and all this fun stuff. Dremio will just take care of that for you. And again, I can see those jobs being run over here periodically. Cool. Okay, so again, a lot of benefits to using Dremio Catalog. Now, in this case, again, if you're attending one of our live workshops, what I'm going to do is I would have you spin up your own environment to Dremio with one click, and you'd be able to kind of join me and kind of getting set up with Dremio. We've already kind of seen a little bit about running queries in Dremio. Okay, again, I've already showed you that you can add data sources in Dremio by clicking over here and add data source. But another nice thing that Dremio has is this built-in semantic layer. Okay, so in this case, I could build spaces in which I can use to organize views to create essentially my model, my warehouse. So I'll show you one example. I might have, I want to add a space, and we might want to call this space, let's say this space represents a warehouse for the marketing department. Okay, now and then I go inside the marketing space. I may want to organize that even further and say, hey, I want to have, a bronze, silver, and gold folder. Okay, so in this case, what I may want to do is be working with some particular data. So in this case, I might have this data that we have over here that we've ingested back in the August 11th folder, the customers data, and I want the marketing department in their warehouse to have access to this data. Instead of just giving them access to the raw data set directly, what I do is I'll save this as a view, and since I want them to have access to the full data set, I will save that as a view under the bronze folder, and we'll just call this, customers. So now when the marketing department is running those queries, they have a view that represents it for them that's just going to be called marketing.bronze.customers. Okay, and I can see that right there, marketing.bronze.customers. And then they may decide to do some edits there. Okay, so, I will just do a simple thing. I'll just say, hey, limit 100. We'll limit 1. Okay, and then I can save that. So again, I might do some cleanup work, deduping, the kind of work you would think of. Save that view as, and then I can go back to marketing and save that as a silver data set, and we can just say that as clean customers. Okay. And then what I might want to do is take that data set. So I go back to marketing, I go back to silver, take a look at clean customers, and I might want to run some aggregations on there. Okay, there's only 2 fields, name, email. So to keep it real simple, we'll just run a count. Okay. And then I can go in there and save that as a view, put that as marketing gold, and we'll call it customer ag. Okay, and I can just do sort of that bronze, silver, gold type modeling and so forth. And the nice thing is, when I take a look at these data sets, like let's say I want to kind of see where this data set's coming from. Okay, I can open our lineage panel. And we can see that, hey, this view was created from this view, which had these fields, and which was created from here. Okay, so I can use this to kind of help understand sort of where my data is coming from. Okay, and then I can go open that up and say, okay, hey, I can see that this was marketing gold from marketing silver, from marketing bronze, all the way to over here. Okay, and then every data set. So right now, again, I'm examining the customer ag data set. Every data set has a wiki, so I can go over here to like edit wiki, and I can generate a wiki, which I can do with Markdown. Okay, or I can generate tags to help make it more discoverable. So I can call this, my tag, we'll say. Okay, and now if I look up like my tag, I can find data sets that have my tag, and so forth. And again, there's also much more robust features that you can enable. So if I go over here to this gear here to take a look at the different settings, okay, there's also some different things, cool features I can turn on and turn off. Now, again, I want to call attention to this autonomous reflections because this is the other layer of performance management that we have, which I'll go over in just a moment. But you can see here, like querying a data set automatically on a click, SQL autocomplete. There's also some really cool things we can turn on and off here. Okay, but also we can manage scale. So we can see here, we can actually manage sort of what engines we have to run queries and how many of them. So like if I go over here to add an engine, I can add an engine. I can choose like what the size of that engine is. When does it automatically shut off? All these kinds of things to help, create the kind of scale you need. I can create different queues, so different lines of queries, and say, okay, hey, here are the different types of lines for my queries that I have, or queues, and then where those queues are routed to. So I'm going to say, hey, queues, so basically route the right queries to the right level of compute that I need, so that way I can make sure that low priority queries aren't blocking high priority queries. Okay, so a lot of really cool things you can do here in Dremio to make sure that you manage things as needed. But we've gotten hands-on, and we've kind of talked about autonomous performance management, again, with the optimized jobs. But what I want to spend some time now is talking about autonomous reflections and how we accelerate. So not just rewriting the data files of your Iceberg tables, but create materializations in an intelligent way to speed up your queries. Now, a feature that Dremio's had that's been very unique to Dremio for years is a feature called reflections. So let me just show you how this works so you can see what it does. And then you can appreciate how amazing it is that going forward, you'll have autonomous reflections where you don't actually have to lift a finger to make this happen anymore. Dremio will just figure this out for you. Okay, so here we have a samples data set. And in the samples data set, there is NYC taxi trips Iceberg. Okay, this is a data set with a lot of records. So what I'm going to do first, just so you can see how many records are on this data set, I'm going to do a count. Okay, and you're going to see that this has a number of, it's about 338 million records. Okay, so running an aggregation may take some time. Okay, so let me run an aggregation I haven't done yet. So let's do aggregations on the total amount. Okay, so we're going to say that I want to find out what the max total amount is, okay, as max total. Then I want to figure out what the min total amount is as min total, and I want to figure out what the average total amount as average total. So now again, to do this aggregation, it has to load up every record. So all three, it has to take a look at the records. So to do the average, it's going to have to do that calculation across all 338 million records. They come up with that final average. Now, right now, I haven't ran this query before, so no results have been cached, and so forth. So I'm going to run this Okay, and we're going to see how long it takes before I do anything to accelerate it. So it's just working directly off the Iceberg table, off the Iceberg data. Okay, oh, I have a typo somewhere. Select max total on line 4, average total amount as average total. From, oh, I see I have an extra comma here. Okay. So let's try that again. Okay, now it's running the query. Okay. So my prediction is going to be something like 15 seconds to kind of crunch this number, which is still really fast when you think about crunching. And it was even faster than that, 9 seconds to basically do these calculations on 338 million records, having to go pull this data from like an S3 bucket somewhere. So it has to, send all these API calls over to S3, pull down all these Parquet files, run these calculations, and all of that happened in 9 seconds. Okay. And again, there are different caching layers built into Dremio for additional performance. So if I were to run this query again, even with that, I'm already going to get performance benefits. Okay, so right there, I've already gotten quite a bit of benefit right there from Iceberg just by caching using what's called the results cache. But again, the records change, so there's still going to be ways you want to accelerate it in a world where data is changing, and this is where reflections comes in. So if I were to go to this data set and click on this little feature here where it lets me go to the detailed section of this data set, okay, you'll see that there's this section called reflections. So there's two types of reflections. There's raw reflections, which are more similar to materialized views, and then there's aggregate reflections, which are more similar to BI cubes, where you're pre-calculating aggregations. That's what I need for this particular query. And again, we were doing all of this on total amount. So total amount is our dimension. And I was specifically doing the actually, that wasn't what I mentioned. Technically, I was doing everything on total amount. And yeah. Oop. So essentially now what it's going to do is going to calculate all of these on there. I'll just do total amount here too. Now again, the reason I would need the dimensions if I was doing a group by, like if I were like grouping it by like zip code or something like that. But we'll just do total amount, leave it like that. If I hit save, see now it's generating. So now it's generating the reflection. So essentially what it's doing is creating like another little mini Iceberg table with the pre-calculated aggregations. Okay, and that's done. That took 7 KB. Okay, but now going forward, if I were to go back to our SQL editor and run this query again, okay, I'm going to get now sub-second performance. So now I'm running that calculation in sub-seconds. Okay, and if I go back to our job over here, our jobs list, see, we're going to see that newest version was done with using the reflection. Okay, so we created the reflection here, and then I ran that query again, and it used the reflection. Okay, and whenever you see these little lightning bolts, that means it's going to use some sort of level of acceleration. Okay, so there you saw that happen. Okay, and here notice that it already had done that. Notice even before I created the reflection right here, it's already using reflection that second time I ran that query. Okay, the reason being is, again, part of it is because we have this feature called autonomous reflections. Dremio is going to notice when it should either leverage caches or leverage reflections for you. And nowadays, you don't even have to do that. So when it comes to optimizing your Iceberg tables, accelerating your queries, you don't have to do that. Your queries will just get faster. Okay, everything will just keep getting better automatically because Dremio is taking care of this stuff for you under the hood. Okay, and again, if I go to preferences, I can see that autonomous reflections is constantly kind of analyzing my query patterns and creating these reflections. And it's not just adding these reflections, meaning adding to your storage, is also subtracting. It'll pick up on reflections that are not being used and mark them. Like if we take a look at the list of reflections that exists here, okay, we see that we have that aggregation reflection that we just created manually. So you can see how it was created through manual mode. And I can see what the size of it is. And generally over the days, you'll generate a reflection score, which will tell you like, hey, is this thing actually being used? Okay, so because your manually created ones, you'll have to manually remove. But you'll know if you get a bad score, you probably don't need it. And if you have a good score, meaning it's used frequently, then it's a good one to keep around, helping you use reflections even in situations where you may want to manually create a reflection versus just allowing Dremio to autonomously create them. So Dremio can do all the work for you, but it gives you the tools so that way you can do your own enhancements as well. But aside from that, anyone can then go connect a BI tool or so forth right there. So essentially, you have everything in Dremio you need to have essentially a full-on Iceberg lakehouse where you just don't have to think about anything. So you can focus about organizing your data, and then you can connect data for your AI workloads to build your AI agents and have all your data sort of all organized in one place across all your different data sources, and easily work and leverage Iceberg to create the much more easy and ergonomic warehouse where your different departments can work together better. So with that, I'll see you all another time. Have a great day. And again, if you enjoyed this and would actually want to participate in one of our live workshops, head over to dremio.com/events to go participate in one of our live workshops. I'll see you all around.